Hello, my Bill 5000 Nation. How's everyone doing today? Hopefully everyone's having a great day. If not, I hope it gets better from here. We are back with another Coffeehouse Crime. This one is titled The Terrifying Case of Altantuyaa Shaariibuu. The terrifying case of words I can't pronounce, and I'm done trying because I have a feeling it's this person's name and I don't want to insult them by fucking it up, bro. Altantuya Shaariibuu. Shaariibuu. Fuck it. Let's get into today's story. Go ahead, turn them lights down low. Put on something comfy, cup with someone special. Let's try to figure out this name.
As the translator to a powerful politician, Altantuya found herself in a very tricky situation when she was bribed to translate an elusive.
I was pretty close on that name. It's the last name. Shaariibuu.
Deal between two nations. Despite her best efforts, she was never rewarded for her hand in the negotiation, and after threatening her powerful boss, she found herself as the primary target of a terrifying operation to silence her, and tragically, all of this would end with the use of C4. Altantuya's case gained international attention when two former police officers were convicted of her murder. But when detectives followed the clues, they realized that those officers may have just been chosen as scapegoats. The mystery deepened further when detectives realized that a political analyst and even the former Prime Minister of Malaysia may have been involved in her execution, and these details would only be the beginning of an extremely twisted and turbulent case. Today, we're looking at the haunting enigma of Altantuya Shaariibuu, a story that remains a perplexing mystery marked by unanswered questions and controversy.
We're in for some shit,
welcome back to Coffeehouse Crime.
Oh my god.
My name is Adrian, and today we're looking at the disturbing case of Altantuya Shaariibuu. Just a disclaimer that this case is based on the information that is publicly known and is subject to change. And
I think I might actually said that one of the pronunciations that I said. Yay.
The future. By the way, if you like true crime, strange or dark stories, then you've come to the right channel. I post twice a week here. If you like to caffeinate while you investigate and would like to participate in this channel, then please consider subscribing. I really do appreciate it. And now, with that said, please grab yourself.
And if you really like to caffeinate and you need a coffee cup, check out the Bill 5000 store. We got some nice ones, even some for camping.
Coffee, pull up a seat and get ready for the deep dive. This is the case of Altantuya Shaariibuu.
Shaariibuu.
Welcome to the beautiful country of Malaysia, folks. Found in Southeast Asia, it is well known for its beaches, rainforests, and a mix of Malay, Chinese, Indian, and European cultural influences. With a population of 33 million residents and a GDP of $373 billion US.
That's like literally three of my most favoritist foods all combined into one culture. I need to go there.
It is no doubt that Malaysia is a major contender on the international stage. Famous landmarks include the Petronas Towers, Batu Caves, and Mount Kinabalu. There is an incredible amount to do here, both urban and rural. Although our story does begin elsewhere, we will eventually...
Man, that is gorgeous. I live in Ohio. I don't get views like that.
Find ourselves in the megacity of Kuala Lumpur. It is one of the fastest growing cities in Asia, and its metro area is home to almost 8 million heartbeats. Kuala Lumpur is a city of luxury, and if you ever visit this place, you'll find many opulent amenities here, including 5-star hotels, spas, and restaurants. The upper class enjoy fine dining, has expensive taste in fashion, and love to keep their senses with lucrative colognes and perfumes, which, in this region, tend to be dominated by aquatic and citric fragrances. You know, it's interesting how these notes change between climate, culture, and personal taste, which leads me on to my next question here. What is your favorite fragrance? Now that we're approaching winter, I'm a huge fan of those deep aromatic scents such as oud, but if I were in Malaysia right now, I would probably go for Versace Eros. Actually, I have a bottle of it right here, and it's all thanks to this video's sponsor Scentbird for introducing me to this fragrance. Scentbird is a place to deepen your relationship with fragrances. You're able to choose and try out designer fragrances every month for just $17. And with
I'm a pretty simple feller. In the wintertime, I want to smell like a pine tree. In the summertime, I want to smell like the beach. That's all I need.
so much to choose from, you will never grow bored of its selection. Select between perfumes, colognes, or unisex options. No matter what you select, with each fragrance you'll get a 30-day supply. This meaning you'll have plenty of days with your new fragrance before having to commit to a full-size bottle. And by the way, this is just a secret between you and me, but some of those brands can cost up to $500. All of a sudden, that $17 vial sounds mighty tempting. Scentbird carries brands like Prada, Gucci, and Versace, and indie labels such as Skylar, Heretic, and Confessions of a Rebel. And some of those indie labels, quite simply, are fantastic. Now, you've already heard that Scentbird helped me fall in love with Versace Eros, but they also helped me discover The One by Dolce & Gabbana. This cologne is perfect for those cozy and intimate evenings, offering warm notes of amber, cedarwood, and ginger. Use my code COFFEEHOUSE for 55% off your first order, which is just over $7 for your first month. And by the way, this is a great present for the festive period. Scentbird is available in both the US and Canada. Thank you, Scentbird, for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get straight back to today's case.
Well, man, it's Christmas time. All I want to smell is sugar, cookies, and fucking pine trees, bruh.
One of those living here in the year 2006 was a woman named Altantuya Shaariibuu. Born in the year 1978, Altantuya embraced a multicultural upbringing.
And snickerdoodles. I love snickerdoodles and potato candy. I love this time of year. Like, this is the time of year where, like, the family makes homemade Buckeyes, potato candy, peanut brittle. It makes me so happy. It's some of my favorites.
That influenced her younger years. Although she was born to Mongolian parents, her life began in the expansive country of Russia, which is where she lived for the first 12 years of her life. Now, despite standing out among her classmates, her kind nature endeared her to everyone around her. She was both sweet and clever at the same time, and her teachers and peers found her a pleasure to be around. She absorbed various cultural influences at a very young age, incorporating elements from Taiwanese, Chinese, Mongolian, and Russian backgrounds into her identity. This made her an extremely unique and interesting person to be around, and it's safe to say that all of those around her were deeply fascinated by her. It was in the year of 1990 that Altantuya returned to her homeland of Mongolia. She continued to go to school here, made many new friends, and succeeded academically. And by the time she graduated from high school, when she was 18 years old, she was also married. This whirlwind romance led her to tie the knot with a Mongolian singer named Madai. But despite welcoming a child together, their union was unfortunately short-lived, and after divorcing, Altantuya's child went to live with her parents while she pondered the next steps of her own life. Initially pursuing a career in teaching, Altantuya showcased her proficiency in 4 different languages, that being Mongolian, Russian, Chinese, and English, with even a sprinkling of French. She was intent on leveraging her multicultural background and linguistic talents to educate her local community. But her plans took an unexpected turn when, on a whim, she decided to relocate to France, viewing this as an opportunity for both personal exploration and language enhancement. Once she arrived in Europe, Altantuya was immediately recognized for her beauty. With perfect skin, a slim figure, and a beautiful smile, it is safe to say that she turned many heads in the street. Encouraged by her friends and her family alike, she enrolled in modeling school and found employment in the fashion industry. But despite her initial success, her modeling career would unfortunately prove fruitless, therefore leading her back to Mongolia with a rather sad sense of loss.
That's sad. She's
Now
pretty
back
young
in her
thing,
former
though.
country, Altantuya had no idea what to do. I think many of us hit that in our early adulthood. You hit your 20s, and then all of a sudden you have no idea what to do with your life.
Yeah, where the fuck am I going? What the fuck do I do? How the fuck did I get here? We've all been there.
She would even remarry and have a second child, but this too ended in divorce. And of course, the child went back to her parents too. Despite feeling adrift and not knowing what to do with herself, Altantuya recognized the one strength that she had, that being her deep and extensive multicultural background. And after a series of unsuccessful gigs, she was given a very unique opportunity to work as an international translator with thanks to a connection by a friend. Thrilled by the idea of using her language skills while traveling internationally, she embraced this challenge and traveled to many places like China, Singapore, and Malaysia. By the year of 2004, Altantuya had firmly established herself within the field of translation, boasting an impressive portfolio with high-profile clientele to boot. It was during a dual convention in Malaysia that her notable beauty and impeccable accent captured the attention of Najib Razak, who at the time was the Minister of Defense and the future Prime Minister of Malaysia. And eventually, Razak introduced Altantuya to his close associate Abdul Baginda. Now, Abdul was a defense analyst affiliated with the Malaysian Strategic Research Centre. And not only was he politically influential, but he was also a distinguished socialite with considerable wealth. Now, you can probably see where this is going already, but Altantuya and Abdul hit it off almost immediately. She was enamored by his success, money, and flattery. And as for Abdul, well, he was smitten by her youth and charm. It didn't take long for the two to grow close. And before you knew it, he was taking her across the globe to luxurious hotels in Kuala Lumpur, Shanghai, and various European cities. Whether engaged in negotiating high-stakes business deals or exploring romantic locations, Altantuya's and Abdul's relationship eventually evolved from professional collaboration into a more intimate connection. It was in October of 2006 that Abdul and Altantuya embarked on another journey to France. But this one would be different. Thanks to Altantuya's years of multicultural experience, she often accompanied him as a personal translator and helped him with communication. Though, saying that, I'm sure that's not the only kind of support she was providing. Altantuya proved herself to be especially useful when high-stakes business deals were on the line. And this time would be no different, because after arriving in Paris, the two would have to negotiate a massive contract worth millions of dollars. So, of all places, what was Abdul Baginda doing here in France?
Man, she came a long way, then struggled all that, and now she's like helping negotiate millions and billions of dollar deals. That's pretty fucking badass, bro. That's probably why she got exploded
in the first place. Well, as it turns out, he was actually here to negotiate a deal for several hybrid war submarines for the Malaysian government. So, as you can imagine, a lot of money was at stake here. And unfortunately, this is where the story becomes both complicated and corrupt. In the intricate web of international negotiations, Altantuya found herself fully unaware of the full magnitude of this deal. And of course, that put her in very hot water. It eventually surfaced that a French company named Amaris put more than 110 million euros of commissions to help facilitate this agreement. Now, Abdul promised Altantuya $500,000 for her role in this negotiation. So she essentially was bribed to keep quiet in a legally messy situation. Now, initially, Altantuya was more than happy to take the deal. $500,000 was more money than she had ever seen in her lifetime. But as time passed by, her patience to receive this money wore thin. You see, Abdul never got around to paying her, causing Altantuya to push back in frustration. Frustrated by his rather elusive behavior, she threatened to expose him if he didn't complete his side of the bargain. I mean, a covert international arms deal with millions of dollars worth of illegal kickbacks. That is not something that anyone wants to be affiliated with. So, now facing blackmail and the looming possibility of an international law enforcement scrutiny, Abdul had a difficult choice ahead of him. Was he going to commit to his promise and fulfill his end of the bargain? Or would he find another way around this? Paying out $500,000 may have solved all of his problems, but he was worried that she might return to extort him in the future. And so, lost in his dilemma, he contemplated a more infinite way of keeping her silent. You may have guessed this already, but Abdul was no stranger to shady affairs. And so, after returning to his political stronghold in Kuala Lumpur, he discreetly leveraged his extensive political network to address his impending crisis. Traditional methods were deemed to be inadequate given the potential consequences here. And so, in a strategic move, he consulted consulted the Prime Minister's Chief of Security, who would later introduce him to Senior Chief Inspector Azala Hadri, a man with an alleged history of silencing people through lethal actions. Behind the scenes, it appeared that Abdul was about to make sure that he would never be threatened.
Man, this is sounding like a bad plot to a fucking horrible James Bond movie. And I love James Bond, bro. Like, does it or does it not? This sounds all like shady as fuck, bro. I'm enjoying it though.
With blackmail like this again. As a side note, it is important to understand here that although Malaysia may seem to bolster a prosperous economy on the outside, its international reputation has actually been tarnished by decades of corruption. The same political party has been running the country for more than 65 years now, and with so much time and power, they have managed to rack up numerous allegations against them. So, this scenario begs the question: how does a prominent member of a corrupt government respond when confronted not merely by an ordinary civilian, but by their lover who is threatening to expose a highly illegal arms trade? I'm sure that, unfortunately, you can already connect the dots. October the 19th, 2006. Altantuya's family were beginning to grow worried. They hadn't heard from their daughter in a little over 24 hours now, and knowing that she was in a foreign country without anyone nearby to support her, her parents knew that they needed to remain vigilant for her safety. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, her cousin decided to take action. Seeking urgent assistance, he filed a police report at the Mongolian embassy in Bangkok, where he then initiated contact with Malaysian authorities, prompting an investigation. After contacting the authorities in Malaysia, a team began to search for Altantuya, and not even 24 hours later, a gruesome sight was discovered in the forest in Puncak Alam. The forest looked more like a battlefield than anything else. A crater, which was clearly created by an explosion, was visible on the forest floor, and amidst the foliage lay the dismembered remains of an individual, with bone fragments, flesh, and tissue scattered in a nightmarish display. With the crime scene so chaotic and dispersed, nobody really knew what to make of this situation.
They actually exploded her with C4?
It was clear that someone had died from an explosion, but could it possibly have been an accident? Sadly, the answer was no, because upon closer inspection, very evident signs of foul play were revealed. This was certainly a case of homicide. It was later revealed that the victim had been shot twice before being stuffed full of explosives, and tragically, it was not those 2 bullets that killed them. So, what was the story behind this gruesome scene? Because whoever the victim was, they must have found themselves on the wrong side of some very powerful people. Put quite simply, civilians do not have access to this sort of weaponry.
Okay, whenever he says a C4 was put in her, does he literally mean it was shoved into her body? Okay, so this is what's in my head right now. This poor girl got shot 2 times. And then dude either just came up and started shoving C4 down her throat, or did he cut her open and fill her with C4? Did that kill her, or did the actual explosion kill her? This is fucked.
It became clear that the explosive residue collected at the crime scene was from explosives usually used by the military. To be exact, the residue was confirmed to belong to pentaerythritol tetranitrate and cyclotrimethylene trinitratamine, which were defined as explosives under the Firearms Act of 1957 and are typically found in C4. Despite the lack of facial features to help verify the body, forensics were able to use bone fragments to narrow down the list of potential victims. And soon enough, DNA analysis sadly confirmed that the body belonged to Altantuya Shaariibuu. Following the news, 2 officers were swiftly arrested in connection to the case, that being Corporal Cyril Umar, aged 35, and Chief Inspector Azala Hadri, aged 30. It is worth highlighting here that Hadri was the man that Abdul hired to fix his little blackmail problem. Now, both Umar and Hadri were part of the Special Actions Unit, an elite Malaysian task force renowned for its specialized capabilities. and beyond their roles in the SAU, they maintained affiliations with high-ranking Malaysian politicians. They had even previously served as security personnel for the former Prime Minister Abdullah Ahmed Badawi. So, these two men were well-trained, well-trusted, and knew how to keep their mouths shut. And if there were ever two men that were perfect for this job, it would likely be these two. With this in mind, all Abdul had to do now was sit back in his estate and let these men do the dirty work. How lucky for him that his clandestine affairs could now be managed effortlessly without any direct involvement. However, what Abdul did not know was that a mere few hours before her disappearance, Altantuya herself had reported the entire affair to the authorities. Aware of how powerful her enemies were, she told the police that, if she were to go missing, the first person they should investigate should be Abdul Baginda. You see, in the days before reporting herself to the authorities, Altantuya suspected that she was being followed. At first, she noticed the same car around her home, parked around the corner or up the block by her house. And then it became more prominent. People were following her to work, to the shops, and then back home. As the intrusive surveillance became increasingly obvious, Altantuya recognized the urgency of seeking help. She knew that she was dealing with a powerful and corrupt political faction here, and quite understandably was terrified of the consequences. And this awareness extended beyond Altantuya herself. Even her family knew that Abdul was terrified.
So basically, this poor girl knew that she was going to get killed. At some point or another, she knew. She went to the police. She went to the police and she told them, like, if anything happens to me, it was this motherfucker here. She knew. That is so fucking sad. And she was probably worried that her whole family was going to be in danger.
News, and before officers could even ask, they gave his name up. So, the question is, what led Altantuya to this lonely forest where her life was then tragically ended? It turns out that, on the night before her death, she was actually on the way to Abdul's house already to negotiate some sort of resolution. However, when she arrived, she would not actually meet her ex-lover. Instead, she met his two henchmen, who then put her in the back of a car and escorted her away, for her to never be seen alive again. Now, with an active investigation in progress, law enforcement pursued every lead they could find. And of course, the political party behind this wanted nothing to do with it. And finally, several weeks after the grim discovery of her body, 3 arrests were finally made.
Hell
that
yeah.
being Abdul Baginda and his 2 henchmen. A pivotal moment in the investigation unfolded when a key witness intimately connected to the case stepped forward. Bala Subramaniam, also known as Bala, was a private investigator hired by Abdul to keep a close eye on Altantuya. And boy, did he emerge with some rather controversial news. Bala claimed that the police had been withholding crucial information on the case, and that, furthermore, he was prepared to reveal everything that he knew. Bala also claimed that not only did the Prime Minister know Altantuya, but he also had a sexual relationship with her too. Bala also revealed conversations with Abdul about his relationship with Altantuya. He claimed that he had inherited her from Najib, who passed her on because he wanted to avoid controversy while he geared up to become Deputy Prime Minister. It was also revealed that Abdul had sought Najib's advice after his trip to France with Altantuya, this implying that Najib was aware of the blackmail and the impending murder case. These allegations were highly inflammatory, and of course painted 2 very powerful men negatively. And that evening, when questioned about his involvement in the case, Prime Minister Najib Razak strongly denied ever knowing Altantuya, and even claimed that he had never personally met the woman. Abdul simultaneously denied having any inappropriate involvement with Altantuya, and furthermore, he corroborated his story with Najib, claiming he had never actually had any involvement with the girl. Which is quite the statement when you think about it. I mean, receipts and witness accounts all say otherwise. In a sudden turn of events, and not even 24 hours after making his first statement, Bala would then suddenly retract it, and make a new statement to say that his first one was not truthful and entirely made up. In response, and in his new statement, he completely absolved both Najib and Abdul of their involvement with Altantuya, essentially getting both of them off the hook. And perhaps no surprise, but shortly after this, he was then reported as missing to the police, because, put quite simply, he had vanished off the face of the earth. Many rumors started to circulate
Go
after
figure.
this, but what was quite obvious is that this man faced extreme pressure from some very powerful people, and whether his disappearance was voluntary or not, he was now firmly out of the spotlight. And it also appeared that, despite all of the evidence stacked against him, Abdul was actually going to get away with the murder of Altantuya with no legal consequence. And in 2008, he was acquitted of all charges. And although the prosecution said that they would appeal, this never actually happened in the end. However, Abdul's henchmen, Cyril Umar and Azallah Hadri, were not so lucky. Someone needed to take the fall after all. And so, on April the 9th, 2009, the High Court judge ruled that they were to be tried and sentenced for Altantuya's murder. Both men were eventually found guilty, with them being sentenced to death by hanging for their crimes. And as their sentences were read out, both men looked onward with a blank and soulless face. Both Cyril Umar and Azallah Hadri appealed their sentences, and surprisingly, 4 years later in 2013, both men were suddenly acquitted of all crimes. That meaning that not only were their lives spared, but both men were also now free to go. Many justifications were given for this, including a lack of personal motive for the murder and insufficient witness testimonies. And while this may have been seen as a win for the politicians of Malaysia, the country's people were enraged by the decision. I mean, people always knew that politicians in their country were corrupt, but this was simply unbelievable to them.
That's straight bullshit, bro.
Like a strange game of ping pong, the prosecution was immediately back on the case, appealing the acquittal to the federal court. And on January the 13th, 2015, the federal court overturned that acquittal, finding both men guilty of murder for the second time. However, during this appeal, it became rather obvious that one of the most important people to this case was now missing, as their second man, Cyril, was nowhere to be found. It appeared that Cyril had fled the country, to Australia of all places. An Interpol notice was issued, and several days later, he was arrested by Brisbane's authorities. The Malaysian authorities requested to extradite him back to Malaysia so he could face his penalties. However, this was actually made impossible due to Australia's own quirky legal system. Now, this is something that I actually found quite interesting, but as it turns out, anyone who's been given a death sentence is actually protected by Australian law, and that, furthermore, they cannot face extradition out the country. Stuck in Australia, Cyril sat in the Villawood Immigration Detention Centre, safe from his fate back in Malaysia. And feeling less pressure now that he was away from the country that convicted him, he began offering his own side of the story to journalists. During his detention, Cyril Azar claimed that, although he had been instructed to carry out the killing of Altantuya, her actual killers were actually still at large. He further claimed that he and Azallah Hadri were not selected for the job, and instead, they were made to be scapegoats. While Cyril was held in Australia, Azallah Hadri continued to appeal his sentencing in Malaysia, and his legal counsel provided pivotal insights into the night of Altantuya's death. It was alleged that the explosives used in the murder were not within the federal police inventory, and that, furthermore, records indicated that Azallah Hadri had only been issued a pistol. And despite their extensive military background, both men were untrained in the use of deadly explosives or bombs. Abdul openly denies any and all allegations, and to this day, both Cyril and Azallah maintain their innocence, consistently asserting that their involvement in the murder was less than what they were convicted of. To this day, Cyril still walks the streets as a free man. This is because it was ruled that the indefinite detention of asylum seekers is unlawful in Australia, and so he remains out of custody in Australia to this day. But Azallah Hadri is not so lucky. His second appeal was overturned and he remains guilty in Malaysia. And so, to this day, he sits on death row in a cell in Malaysia, awaiting his execution by hanging. It looks like it's one of those moments where Cyril was one step ahead of the game here, and the exact details of who was there when Altantuya was murdered, or indeed who is responsible for pressing the button, remains unknown. All that we do know is that Altantuya was unfortunate enough to find herself in the middle of a very sticky political situation, one that was filled with lies, smoke and mirrors, and corruption. She was thrust into an uncomfortable situation before she knew it, was bribed and lied to, used, and then murdered. Altantuya was beautiful, intelligent, and driven, and towards the end of her life, she was finding success in an occupation that she loved. But tragically, she unwittingly crossed paths with the wrong individuals, and this resulted in her losing her life in the most brutal of ways. To this day, Abdul lives consequence-free for what he allegedly did
Piece
to
of shit,
Altantuya,
bro.
and he stands as an example of what can happen when you cross someone with all the power and none of the consequences. Quite a sensitive, controversial, and very political case when we think about it. But yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up our case today, folks. As always,
All right. Ooh, that was... So there's just no justice for this poor girl. And probably never will be. Man, that's some political bullshit right there, bro. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that's some bull. I really enjoyed today's video, though. If you all enjoyed today's video as much as I did, please go down there, hit that thumbs up. While you're down there, go on over, smack that subscribe button, become part of the Built 5000 Nation. We do some crazy shit here. And if you want to know when that crazy shit happens, ding that bell. It might work for you. It might not. If it does, I'll know. Because you'll show up for one of my premieres, and I'll get to talk to you guys in the chat over on the right or down below, depending on your device. And if you really want to support the channel, check out the store. The link is in the description. We got some really amazing stuff down there. Some of the best stuff out there. You can't tell me otherwise unless you go check it out for yourself. As always, be good to one another. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Man, I hope someone goes to their house, puts a shit ton of C4 in their ass, and hits the fucking button. The worthless pieces of shit. Oh, that pisses me off. Oh, it's so fucking much.